Welcome, everyone.
Welcome. So it's this like weird pause where me and Ellie are just like staring at each other like, which one's gonna talk first? Good day. Because I always say good morning and you say good day.
Good afternoon. It's actually afternoon today that we're recording. So look at that.
I know. We're off our schedule. I was just
Yeah.
lamenting to Ellie about how I'm cranky because our water was shut off at my house by the city for the day. And so by my parents, then my parents' air conditioning isn't working. So I'm just like in a cranky mood, but we'll pull it together.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's the worst though. It's the worst. The air conditioning in my car went out last week or the week before. And I was like, okay, like maybe it just needs charged up, optimistic, trying to be optimistic. No, that is not all it needed. It's like $800 later.
Oh no.
Yes.
And of course, right when it's getting hot outside, it's been like so mild, and now it's like got really hot this week. Yeah, but we went to the pool twice this weekend, so that was fun. Like that's one thing.
We got all of our water stuff out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like all like the splash. Like, do you have like splash pads or sprinklers?
It's almost. Yeah, we have like the viral Sam's pool, like the little like air inflatable pool. And then the kids put their like plastic Fisher Price slide in it, and they were just having a blast.
Fun.
Yeah, they were having a blast.
At Walmart, like a really big inflatable pool. That was like it was probably like 2 feet, water for only like $30, and I didn't buy it. I think I'm gonna go back and get it because I thought we had our pool from like 2 years ago. We bought like a pretty big inflatable pool, and then we used it that year and this year. And I was like, it's kind of on its last leg, but I like thought we still had it. And then my husband Joe was like, no, I threw it away. It was gone.
They get nasty.
They do. Yeah. But this one was like it was like a good length that I feel like I could sit in it to sunbathe, like while the kids are playing. And that's what I want. Because the other one was like smaller, but like higher, and I wanted like the long rectangle one so I can like lounge in it while they're playing. Because we do the sprinkler a lot, but like I don't want to be in the sprinkler, like sunbathing. That's kind of annoying. But then I get hot.
Yeah.
If you're not in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, this one's perfect. I can sit in like a chair. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. With like your feet in to cool down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my parents live at like a nice apartment complex with like a saltwater pool. So we come all the time. We went twice this weekend, which Alda can swim now. So that's fun. Well, she learned at the end of last year. And so like this year is like her year. But Desi he likes playing in the water, but he's very cautious. Like even with his floaties on, he just kind of stays on the steps. But at least like now he's at the age where I'm not having to be like holding him all the time. Like he can wear floaties, and like he's not gonna like die if he falls off the steps. It's like a nice age. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can like sit on the steps, just let him play, and like Alda can just swim, and like I can just kind of chill out a little bit. Where I feel like we've always been in the year of like holding a child in the pool, so you like never can just like relax,
Or one person in, one person out. My husband's always in, and then I'm always like sitting on the outside, like running around chasing the youngest around the edge.
Yes.
Don't fall in. Please don't fall in.
I don't know if Brinley's like this, but like Desi's very careful about like not running. Like last year he wasn't, but this year he'll like be careful not to go to the edge. But that's just more his personality.
Yeah, no. Nope, not at all. Brax was way more careful, like really listened. She's just like gone. Like she does not care. I have to just hold on to her. She has like her puddle jumper, and it's got that like spot in the back where it latches, and I like hang on to that while she runs around on the edge because I'm like, I mean, she'll float, like it'll be fine, especially with Cody in the water, but I'm like,
but
you're gonna be traumatized if you fall in.
Yes.
Or that.
Yes. Yeah, no, Alda is way more adventurous than Desi, which is just funny. Like our boy is more careful, but she's like way more adventurous. But she's always been pretty good about the water. She just loves the water. Like literally in February, she was begging us to go swimming in the lake when we were hiking. Like she'll go in any water. She just loves it so much, which is part of why she's swimming, like can swim, because she's just had so much motivation to like swim.
Yeah,
Like
Brax
she just
loves swimming in the pool, but he does not love like getting in the lake. Like when we were going to the lake every weekend, like he hated swimming in the lake water if he couldn't see. Like he just doesn't like that.
I mean,
Which I was like that as a kid. Yeah, I was like that as a kid too. And they've always, like both of my kids, take some time to actually warm up to the water.
Mm-hmm.
Like we went and stayed at a hotel a couple weekends ago for my brother's 40th birthday, and she was like not about the pool, like just didn't want to get in. And Brax took some time to like really get like used to it. But it was the first time we've swam, this year.
Yeah, for the year, yeah.
But then they were like fish, and we couldn't get them out. So it's usually how it goes.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
anyways,
good. Yeah. We don't have too much time today, so we're gonna jump right into our topic. We're gonna talk about partner birth support. So just some tips for partners. Tell them to skip ahead 7 minutes if you want them to listen to this podcast, if they don't want to hear about baby swimming. But some tips for partners on how to prepare to be a good birth partner for your birth. And then also just a little bit about the difference of how doulas versus partners like support you through birth. So I don't know.
This is so funny.
Yeah, what?
This is so funny because I just got off of a consult and we were talking and it was just her. She's in her 3rd trimester. She was like, yeah, I try not to hound him, but I just keep asking like, well, have you read that book yet? Like, this is happening soon.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm not really sure if he understands. And I'm like, so much of like societal norms, and I think it's getting better, but so much of societal norms is like, oh, you just like take her to the hospital and you make sure she has water, and aside from that you don't have to do anything. And I'm like, that's so not it.
Yeah.
So important.
It's been on my mind because I just did today. I did an interview with Wellcore PT's like pregnancy village that they have, and they asked me about this, so I was talking about it a lot. But also, we just had a second time mom give birth with us. I think I made a reel about this where she said her husband was like, oh my gosh, that was like a world of difference for me between not having a doula for our first birth and having a doula for our second birth. I felt so much more prepared and knowledgeable and so much more involved in the birth, where like the first birth, I just didn't know what to do. So like, it's not that he didn't want to do anything. He just like sat on the couch and hung out with her because he was like, I don't know how to help. Like we're just going to let the nurses and doctors kind of get this. And he was like, the second birth, I felt, like I was like giving him things to do and telling him how to help. And he like left feeling a lot more like, oh my gosh, like I was able to be helpful in that experience. And like, and I think that that's so important coming out of your birth, like feeling closer and like supported by one another is like starting out your journey as parents on like a really positive relationship note, right? So I just think it's really important. I know for me, I got Joe to learn so much about birth because we weren't poor, but like we didn't have a lot of money when we had Alda because I was still in school and wasn't working. Like I quit when I got pregnant, or not when I got pregnant. When I had her, I quit my job to stay home with her and just go to school. So we were trying to save money, and I was kind of like, I'm having an unmedicated birth. I need somebody to support me through that. And if you're not going to learn all of it, then we're going to have to spend money on a doula. And so, I mean, now, like, I know more of, like, oh, like, doula would still have offered me, like, things that, like, Joe wasn't able to offer me. And I had very privileged birth experiences of, like, I had very easy births that, like, I didn't necessarily need a ton of extra support. But he did a really good job of, like, reading The Birth Partner, taking all the childbirth education classes, stuff like that. And it was extremely helpful. And there is like a lot of research to show that not only just having a doula support your birth, but having any somewhat educated support person, including a partner who has taken some childbirth education and birth support classes, increases your chance at having a positive birth experience. So I think that, you know, not everybody can afford or have access to a doula, but like most people have maybe not even their baby daddy or their husband, but maybe even just their mom or their sister who they can like help train to like be a part of the birth in a more proactive way, so they can have that support. So yeah, I don't know, what are some things that you suggest to partners to like prep for birth?
Well, I think it's really important that partners engage in whatever education plan they've come up with, the couple has come up with, whether that be attending classes, doing virtual classes, reading books, whatever it is. I think the partner really needs to start there and really engage and be an active participant in it. Absolutely. And really embrace their role, because like I said, societal norms like, oh, you just sit in the corner and you don't need to do anything. But we know, like you just said, the research shows such benefit from having a really active partner in the birth space. And so I think that's number one. I know that making sure that you're doing classes that are going to point out ways that your partner can help or your support person can help, because yeah, it's great for them to do the education and understand what you're going through. But if you don't give them actionable things to do during each stage and phase, and it goes all the way into postpartum, then they still are going to leave there feeling like, okay, great, I understand what you're going through and I can be encouraging, but like, what are the actual hands-on things I can do? Whether that be like, okay, during the early stage of labor, you want to help distract her and help turn on a good show and maybe set up the space that she's going to be laboring in at home and help with that and encourage her to change positions and get in the shower, you know, those types of things. Like, things that to us, to people that talk women through birth all the time, feel like so small. But like to somebody who's never gone through it, they're like, oh yeah, okay, I can do that. Like I can handle that. You know?
Yeah.
So
really
I know
understanding like the labor process is so huge, because you need a lot of like reminders about that stuff when you're in labor. Like this is normal, this is to be expected, this is where you're probably at in labor. I think that that's so important, just to be knowledgeable about the whole entire process. Again, like this is our world, so like we're very comfortable in that space. There are things we just do automatically when we're inside of like a birth space. Learning some of those things are so important to a birth partner. And like also I'd say like the top two things are like comfort measures, like whether that's like emotional like comfort measures, affirmations, physical comfort measures like hip squeezes, massage, birth environment, how to set up a birth space, how to make it comfortable, the use of like different positions that you can suggest and try out. And then second thing being most important is advocacy and communication, and knowing that you're going to have to fill that role in the birth environment. Because even if I know like in me and Joe's relationship, I'm like the more outspoken, opinionated one. So like when it comes to advocating for our kids, like in a medical care environment, or like when we were wedding planning, like I'm the person with the stronger opinions who's going to like push harder on people to like make things how I want them to be. But in the birth space, I need to focus on giving birth. I need to stay in that primal brain. And so even though my sweet Midwestern husband is not the person who naturally fills that role in our relationship, he needed to have the tools to know how to step into that role so that I could stay in my birth mindset and not have to step out of that mindset.
Yeah. And I think one thing to note is that, like, because me and my husband are the opposite. Like, he's very outspoken, doesn't care what anyone thinks, you know? But when it comes to a medical setting, it's different because he doesn't always know, and he does turn to me, I mean, me as a nurse, like I do feel more comfortable speaking up in a medical care setting. So I think that's something to consider for partners. Like, yes, you might be the more outspoken one, you might be the one that, you know, is really great at advocating, but are you going to feel comfortable doing that in a medical care setting? And if you're not, then what do we need to do to get you there? Because it is, like you said, so important for the partner to take on that role so that the birthing person's not having to spend time in that thinking brain. So
yes, absolutely. And highly recommend, we should probably just link it, but we have a whole episode on communication advocacy tools, so we won't jump into all those like practical skills in this topic. But absolutely, that's a great resource for people to check out. As a lot of there, there's a lot of resources on that kind of stuff, but absolutely suggest looking into that for a lot of our practical tips on how to ask questions, state preferences. I think that's something else that's a big piece of the puzzle is having like a sit down conversation with your partner about your birth preferences and through your birth plan and explaining the why behind them, so that when there's maybe pushback from providers being like, you're saying, well, we want delayed cord clamping until the cord goes white. And they're like, well, this is why we only do delayed cord clamping for 60 seconds. That like, that's not what your partner knows that, and that's not what they want. And so then you can just be like, no, we're doing it until it goes white. And you don't have to explain the why to the provider. That's usually just a waste of energy, and it's unnecessary. You're not going to change that provider's mind on how they practice standardized care, but you are allowed to request individualized care. Obviously, like, ask, and we talk about this in the advocacy episode, like ask questions and figure out, is this a safe option? But within safe options, there's lots of different options. And so you don't have to like change the provider's mind or explain why, but knowing why and like why that's important to the person who's giving birth is a huge part of like that advocacy puzzle or communication puzzle that helps you then advocate for what you're wanting, because you have the discussions about why they're wanting certain things and why those are important to them.
Yeah, I always recommend going through the birth plan together because, and sometimes too, if partners haven't had a chance to sit in on all the education or read the books or whatever, they don't always know what the birth plan entails or like what certain terminology means or whatever. So like it's really important to make sure that you've talked through all of that so they know what a ROM is, rupture of membranes, or they know what something else is like that. The other thing I really love teaching partners about, well, you already touched on this, but like through each stage of labor, like the body language to kind of pick up on with the birthing person. And as far as like, yes, like transition is really, really intense, and you might feel a little nervous as the partner, like, is everything okay? But just rest assured that these are the things that go along with transition, and it means that you're getting closer. But also the fear, tension, pain cycle, because I think it's important for partners to understand and recognize when the birthing person is holding a lot of tension or feeling anxious or fearful, so that they can break that cycle and therefore help them through the contractions or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. And something about you as a partner learning childbirth education is that lots of times I see partners get really anxious in the birth environment because they don't know what's going on. And so having that childbirth education lets you feel more in control of like, this is what the monitors say and why she's hooked up to this and like stuff like that then you aren't putting your anxiety on the person who's giving birth. Because even if you are not like talking to them in an anxious way or saying you're anxious or saying you're scared, I lots of times see people who are giving birth pick up on their partner's nervous energy inside of the birth space, and then get that fear being like, is something wrong? Is something not normal? Like that you're scared or you're anxious. What's happening that I'm not seeing? What's going on that my partner is like anxious and nervous and scared right now? And so sometimes they just pick up on that like body language or, more anxious discussions or more anxious touch or whatever, that then it gets them into like a little bit of like a fear-based mindset. And so being able to kind of like learn all the learn as much as you can, get comfortable with the birth space, and it's okay if you have some anxiety and some fear, that's okay. Like it's an odd environment to be in, especially seeing like your partner like in pain and uncomfortable, but also learning ways how to like manage that for yourself so that doesn't get put onto your partner, I think is really great.
Yeah. And the other part of that too, I think, is reminding partners that they are the expert in their partner. So they're as partners, as husbands, boyfriends, baby daddies, whatever, they know their significant other best. So they know, they can pick up on if they're anxious, if they're frustrated, if they're, nervous. They pick up on those small things well before anybody else can. And so I think that can be really empowering for partners to be like, oh yeah, I am the expert in them in this, in this room. And so I am their best advocate when they can't advocate for themselves. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
The common question I get is, what's the difference between doula and partners, and what do they do differently? Which one? Like the first thing is that a doula is not just a doula for the person giving birth; they're also a doula for the partner. So if all the things we're talking about seem really overwhelming to you, if you are a more anxious person, sometimes having somebody else like a doula in the birth space who knows birth, like you were just saying, like, your partner the best, but somebody who knows the birth environment, and like somebody who you get to become comfortable with before the birth. So like, you're gonna meet the nurses day of. You might not have ever met the provider that's on call or not know them well, but having somebody that you're like, they know our birth preferences, they know us, they know what we're wanting out of this birth experience, they know that I'm anxious about this, or I don't do well in medical settings or things like that. Having somebody to help you navigate that is super, super beneficial to you, as well as giving you that guidance of how you can help your partner through the birth process, like offering positions, comfort measures, things like that they can hands-on proactively do, instead of you having to remember all of those things that you've learned and stuff.
Yep. I know. Sometimes when I do childbirth education with partners present, they look at me and they're like, I'm never going to remember all this. And I'm like, it's okay, because we have this relationship. You have my number. If something comes up and you're not sure how to navigate it, let me know. And I think that's the beauty of working with somebody on a personal level beforehand, because then they do feel more comfortable being like, okay, I'm going to text Ellie. Like, I'm going to ask her.
Yeah.
So,
totally. Yeah. And then and I guess I kind of already touched on this, but in a birth space, how we're different than a partner is just that we are that expert. We are that person who is going to know, oh, baby's occiput posterior, and so these are the birth positions or spinning babies techniques we need to do to get baby to flip. But outside of that role, there's still so much benefit to partners, because what I see a lot of times as a doula is that sometimes when I bring up concerns or advocacy, it's less received by nurses and doctors versus the partner bringing up causes of concerns or advocating for the person giving birth. I just see be a lot more well received and perceived as an urgent thing that needs to be resolved, because they're kind of one and the same as kind of like their patient, you know, like it's kind of like a duality to them. Of course, the person giving birth is like the primary patient, but you're also like part of this experience as the father or grandma or whatever, like, you know, of the baby. And I definitely see a little bit more receptiveness towards partners bringing up, like advocating for the person giving birth over even like your doula or something like that.
Yeah. And I'm sure you feel this way too, but I feel like anytime that me and a partner like get to work truly as a team in a birth, it's so rewarding. Like one person's doing counter pressure on one side and the other person's doing it on the other side because of whatever position mom is in. Or like, you know, we're doing abdominal lifting and one person's on one side, I'm on the other. Like it's so fun to do things together and get them involved and they feel confident because you're doing it alongside them or you're telling them, hey, put your hands here and you do this. And yeah, I love that so much.
Plus, like lots of times you need two people, especially like in a medicated birth of like, you know, I find lots of times I kind of get into this role, especially with a medicated birth of like, I might be doing the counter pressure or something, but then the person who's giving birth also wants somebody up by their head, like giving them words of encouragement, giving them sips of water, talking to them, like giving them some shoulder head scratches or something, you know, and like getting that from your partner is also going to increase your oxytocin, which keeps, you know, labor progressing more smoothly. I like just had a birth where I just like locked the partner and his like the husband and wife in the bathroom together and put her in the shower and was like, you guys go in there and like you take a shower and you hang out in there with her and just like chat with her, keep her company, sit on the toilet silently, I don't care, but just like be in there with her. And it just can give you like that oxytocin boost to like keep labor progressing, pick things up, and just feel like safe and comforted. Like, I mean, it's so true. It's like what gets the baby in gets the baby out. Like feeling like loved and safe and everything is like what boosts those oxytocin receptors in our brain. And who better to get that from than like the person you felt safe enough to procreate with? Like that's kind of, you know, the point.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I love that. I love that trick too. And I mean, I know you've done this before where you've like gone and met people at their house and then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to give you guys some time. Like we still got a ways to go. So I'm going to like go home and let you do your thing and I'll be back. Yeah. But
I know. Yeah. Sometimes I'm just like, they just don't know what to do. So just like getting them into like a safe, like getting them into like a comfortable side lying position that they can feel comfortable and then being like, okay, you guys like put on a movie and snuggle and like, I'm going to go grab lunch and I'll be back in like an hour. And then we'll kind of see. And like 9 times out of 10, when I come back, things have picked up. Like are more intense and everything like that. Like once they had a little bit of time alone, feeling like bringing down their anxiety. I see so many first-time parents, which this is like a great partner tip too, of like they start having contractions. They're like, oh my gosh, it's happening. I need to do something. So like they want to just go to the hospital because they feel like I have to do something. Yeah. But calming down the energy, which is something we do a lot of times as doula when we go to their house, being like, you're safe, you're fine, you're not at the labor pattern that like your doctor wants you to go to the hospital yet, you wanted to labor at home for a while, like let's set up these like stations around the house and get the house comfy and like bring down that adrenaline a little bit so that we can keep labor going and get you into kind of like a safe labor space till we hit that phase of labor that now we need to transfer to the hospital. And that's something partners can obviously do as well, which is why the childbirth education of knowing the stages of labor, knowing when to go to the hospital, knowing where your partner's at based on contraction pattern can be so useful.
I'm giggling inside because I just remember texting with one of our clients' partners in the middle of the night, and they were like, she's pooping and she's throwing up and everything seems more intense. Like, I just don't know. Like, I feel like we should go to the hospital. And I was like, no, like that is normal.
Yeah, like, that can happen in early labor. You're like, body's trying to clear out.
Yeah. And he was like, I think we should go. And I'm like, I don't think so. Not yet.
Yeah.
But
Totally.
it was just,
I see that
like,
all the time as people like rushing to the hospital too soon.
yeah.
But yeah, and then one more thing I was just thinking of, and I don't know if you have anything else to add after this, but oh, I guess I already mentioned this. I was gonna say running through the birth plan. Maybe I didn't. Running through the birth plan with the nurses and doctors when you get to the hospital. So not necessarily like keeping them like in line with it throughout, but walking them through it when you first get to the hospital with them, like pulling them aside and talking through it, I think is really helpful. It's just like setting the tone and the expectations for the delivery, I think is really great.
Yeah. I just really feel like birth is a time where partners can really shine. Like,
yeah,
like your significant other is going to remember how you make them feel during such a vulnerable and challenging time, that this is your time to shine. It's not your time to just like sit back and chill. And it will stay with them forever. Absolutely. And I think it's just so important.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like, you know, it's like the only time period probably in history where like men are the main support partners. So like I get in like birth. So like I get, because like we used to have more like community centered birth where like the women, the aunts, the birth keepers in the community, the cousins, whatever, would like all kind of gather around the women to help them give birth. And now that we're in more like single family households, like the person that you're closest to support you through the experience is usually the partner. And I just think it's like, I get why dads are like uncomfortable, especially, you know, a male partner, are like uncomfortable in the birth space, because it is a very like female dominated foreign environment to them. But I think like you said, like stepping up and being and hacking it and figuring it out, and being able to like show up and be a great support partner, just like I kind of said in the beginning, sets up your parenting journey together on such like a positive note. It's kind of like I said this in my interview this morning. I was like, it's like the wedding to marriage of like the wedding is supposed to be this like big day to celebrate and set up the marriage of like, oh, you're like getting everybody that you know together to like come together and see you say your vows, and then like so they'll support you in like what you vowed for like your marriage. Like it's very similar. It's like this like big day of your life that's gonna like kind of is like the big day that sets up then kind of like your confidence and attitude going into like your parenting journey. And that doesn't mean that it has to go perfectly or, you know, but having like somebody there supporting you through it that you feel like you can lean on and trust is kind of like setting you guys up for success in terms of your like relationship, and parenting together.
And it's, so I think it's so empowering. It's so empowering for both people, but, and you just carry that empowerment through postpartum.
Absolutely, for sure. So, I agree. Yeah. Well, send this to, if you're a woman listening to this, send this to your, if you're somebody who's expecting a baby, send this to your partner.
And if you're a partner listening because your significant other sent it to you, it's your time to shine.
Thanks for being here.
So just jump in.
Yes, this is a great starting point. Short and sweet episode. Tried to get you started. Attend the childbirth ed. Advocate if your partner wants a doula. Be supportive of that, because that's something I see a lot is partners just being like, "What does a doula do?" And like, even if you're gonna do all the great things, like it's still great if you have the means and resources. If your partner wants a doula in the space, to get one, and be supportive of that, and know that they're not there to replace you at all. They're there to support you as well. And then also, my favorite book for birth partners is The Birth Partner. So I highly suggest, yes, it's called The Birth Partner. We'll link it in the podcast. I highly recommend grabbing that, even just as a place to start. I find lots of dads really like the straightforward information that it gives, because like we were kind of talking about, like you kind of need that practical information. And a lot of dads like the practical information. They don't want to read all like the wooey birth stuff that's more focused on like women, like the emotional stuff or whatever. They want to know, like, what do I need to do and what do I need to know? And I like the birth partner for that. It's a great resource for that. So start there with reading that, and then, you know, just jump in.
And there's also, if you are in the Kansas City area, there's also a really great opportunity for dads. It's a class taught by a dad, and he's also a nurse. It's called Babies and Beers. So, Beers and Baby. I don't know.
I don't remember. Well,
I should have looked that up beforehand. But anyway,
no, it's okay.
I probably butchered it, but it's great. It's usually held at a brewery, so like, so cool. Grab another like dad who's, you know, getting ready to jump into this journey with you, and like, go check it out. So
yeah, and I think it's mainly focused on postpartum support, right, or like newborn care.
It might be
correct. Yeah, but I mean, you also need to learn about that.
It's a good connection. It's a good connection.
Absolutely.
And a good support system. Other guys.
Yeah, you're meeting other guys that are like due around the same, that are having babies around the same time as you and stuff. So yeah, super, super great resource. And yeah, thanks everybody for listening.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, bye.